So what we're going to do is we're here to expose it, let people tell their story, and let everybody in the public see the horrors of the court system in Suffolk County, New York.
Long Island Backstory. Long Island's news alternative to the Newsday Cablevision news monopoly. With Chief Correspondent Gary Jacobs.
Our next guest, Robert Trotta, as Carl mentioned, is a legislator, Suffolk County legislator from the 13th Legislative District. And we've had a few politicians speak at the meetings before, and as I said, we're not really a political group. But as Carl said, one of the things that Americans for Legal Reform we advocate for is enough already with the lawyers. As Carl said, there's nothing wrong with being a lawyer. I said that with my fingers crossed, but lawyers do have a place, and they actually have a place in government because they do write laws. But as Carl said, they shouldn't be 65% of our government, because that's not a representative of the people. And Legislator Trotta, he's a family guy from Kings Park, retired police officer. And what I really like about him is that he's not a politician, or he is a politician now, but he wasn't a politician. And most importantly, he's not part of the old boys club. And when he ran as a Republican, he really wasn't the chosen candidate. And that's a big feat to win when you're not the chosen candidate for your district. But he said, I don't care, I'm gonna go out there anyway, and I'm gonna run, I'm gonna knock on doors, get to know the people. And really, against all the odds, he won in a primary, which is difficult to do. I think it was a three-way primary, and then he won the general election. Now that he's in, I believe he's earned the respect of all the other legislators, even ones who may not have wanted him in. He's earned their respect, even though he speaks out against government. And another thing that I like about Legislator Trotta is that he speaks out against corruption. He's not afraid to go out there and say what's wrong with Suffolk, Nassau County, with the whole island. And listen, that takes a lot of guts, because a lot of people, if you go against the establishment, they're not going to push you. They're not going to push you further down the road. And I don't know what his ambitions are, but you really have to give somebody a lot of credit. And he'll speak today about the corruption in government, because look, you speak about the corruption, then you got to sit next to these people at the legislative meeting. So it's not an easy thing to do. A lot of people, they say they're going to speak out against corruption. They win the election, they get in there, and they become just like everybody else, and become part of this political elite class. So I don't want to take up too much time, because when I said, what do you want to speak about? Could you speak about corruption? And I said, could you do it for about an hour? And he said I could do it for 3 hours. So I don't want to take up too much time. I'm going to let you stay at the podium though. And at the end of his speech, we're going to take some questions. The only thing I ask is when you do stand up to ask a question, I'm going to bring the mic so we get it, because we are recording this for TV. It'll air next month. But please ask a question and don't give a lecture. I know we all have a lot of things on our mind, and we can speak to Rob Trotta after. But when you get up, please just ask a short question. He's taken the time out of his evening to be nice enough to speak to us, even though a lot of people here aren't in his district. Probably most of us aren't. And he's really not gaining votes by speaking to us. He's doing it because he wants to make a difference. So let's respect that. Everybody, please welcome Legislator Robert Trotta.
First off, I'm sick as a dog. I never get sick, but I'm sick. I got a sore throat, so I'm not feeling great. A little background. First of all, thanks for having me here tonight. There's probably not one person who lives in my district right now in Smith. Oh, maybe one person. Okay, a couple. I was a cop for 25 years, about 12 of which I was in various federal task forces. Back in 2000, I went to the ATF for a couple of years, then I went to the IRS for a year, and then I did the last 10 years, I did 10 years with the FBI, and the last year, when the Chief Burke, you might have heard of him, took over the police department, in his infinite wisdom, he took 3 guys out of the FBI that were there, 4 guys out of the DEA were there, even though there's a heroin problem and a gun problem going on, 2 guys out of the ATF, and put us back in precincts. So I was literally on Thursday, August 26th of 2012, I was in Costa Rica at the request of the Costa Rican government testifying in a $30 million money laundering trial. The following Monday, I was in the first squad. My first case was a copper stolen from the basement of an abandoned house in Wyandanch. I literally went from the pinnacle of law enforcement to the basement. And why? Because we put a psychopath in charge of the police department. And you're going to learn today why I believe this person was put in charge of the police department. And it has to do with the root of corruption. I was watching this video when I came in earlier, it was a woman speaking about how psychopaths and people rise to the top who are a little bit off. And I think this happened in this case. There's the district attorney, along with Chief Burke, went through this whole process of taking over the county and getting rid of Steve Levy. I mean, I don't know the country you live in, but the country I live in, that if you take $4 million from someone and tell him go away, that's extortion. Okay, that's what they did to Steve Levy. If he committed a crime, he should have been arrested. And if he went to trial and was found guilty, he's found guilty. He was found innocent, he's found innocent. You don't take $4 million from someone and say go away. That's extortion. That's not what we pay the district attorney to do. So now what happens? Steve Ballone walks into the county executive spot. And what does he do? He makes Burke, who did the investigation to Steve Levy, along with Chris McPartland, the head of the political corruption unit. You might have seen him on the cover of Newsday last week. He's being investigated for political corruption by the FBI. Think about that. The head of political corruption for the county of Suffolk is being investigated for political corruption. It's mind-boggling that this day and age, in an affluent community, this is happening. We're one of the richest communities in the country, yet we're flat busted broke. Flat busted broke. And I can make a very strong argument the root of all evil is this. This is a list of campaign contributions of $5,000 or more to the county executive. It's pages and pages and pages of well-known people and businesses, many of which are on the list of Skelos and Silver, which are all these LLCs. One guy, I'm not going to pick. If this was a Republican, it'd be the same thing. It's not my point. My point of the matter is the money is staggering. Anytime Steve Ballone is spending $2.7 million to get elected to a job that pays $180,000 a year, clearly there's something wrong. That's the root of it. So I introduced a bill to limit how much you could take. I don't want to take anything from anybody doing business with the county. I think that's wrong. Whether it be a union, whether it be a contractor, whether it be Breslin or the other guy who's building Heartland there, who gave $500,000 in contributions. That's wrong. And what does it do? It boxes out everybody else. That's the root of the problem. It's campaign contributions. There's got to be some type of reform. I reintroduced the bill again. Thank God this is going on in Nassau County, because we're starting to get a little bit of an uprising. But unless you people show up there and back me on these things, it will die. And the reason it will die is because the county executive and 12 of the legislators, 12 of the 18, the majority, are Democrats. So no matter what I say, no matter what I do, it means absolutely nothing. Zero. And I can make a very strong argument that if it wasn't for Newsday and the New York Times and News 12 putting James Burke on the cover of Newsday for a variety of things, for having sex with prostitutes, for one of them, he would still be the chief today. Because it's like the squeaky wheel gets the grease, and even in politics. I mean, this is what on the cover of Newsday back in 2013. The chief of police had sex with a prostitute in his police car. And what did the county executive do? He stood by him. Then, a short time later, he's on the cover of Newsday. Actually, this one occurred first, where he is being investigated by the FBI for whatever he did to Christopher Loeb. He stood by him again. What is that telling you? Would this happen in New York City? There was the Nassau County Police Commissioner got fired for sending a cop out to go arrest a guy with a warrant, which is illegal. Like, you can make an argument, I can make an argument. I know the guy has a warrant, I need to send a cop out to get him. That's what happened in Nassau. In the city, this would never happen. Out here, it's embraced. And you know why it's embraced? Because 80% of the people don't even vote. I mean, the big joke I always do, I start off my lectures, and I should have done this one, is that 86% of the registered voters in my legislative district, 86% in my legislative district didn't vote for me, and I won by a landslide. 80% didn't vote at all. It's bizarre. Steve Ballone won with 11% of the vote. That's all he won with. 11% of the registered voters voted for him, and 9 voted for Jim O'Connor, and that's it. So the people we have to blame are the people who don't vote. I mean, we're our own worst enemies. I mean, it's, hopefully a Facebook and social media will start to change these things, but, it's not looking good. I mean, I gotta tell you, I worked in the FBI for 10 years. The arrow is due north. The compass, the moral compass is, hey, we want to do this right. If the guy did something wrong, we're going to get him. We'll do whatever we can to get these people. In politics, it's all over the place. I mean, we have something called the waiver committee. You know how Nassau County has the $25,000 contracts? There was $10 million worth of $25,000 contracts. Total giveaways. That's the payback, ladies and gentlemen, for these big campaign contributions. Because guess what? People on the street aren't giving politicians money. It's people who want something who are giving politicians money. So all those contracts are that. What we have in Suffolk County is a time bomb. It's worse than this because we have a waiver committee. Now, what's a waiver committee? It's 3 people, 2 from the county executive he appoints, and 1 from the presiding officer. Presiding officer is a Democrat, county executive is a Democrat. A rubber stamp. Boom. So if there's a contract, this is my favorite little analogy. Well, actually, I have a few now. Anybody ever been to Cubsog Beach, which is out in the Hamptons? It's a county beach. It's a shack. It's basically a shack where you buy hot dogs, hamburgers, take a shower in, outdoor shower. There's like underneath is a changing room. It burned down the day after Labor Day last year. So it comes before us, and they want $750,000 for renovation and rehabilitation of the shack. Okay, so I read the bill. It's $350,000 for the design of the new shack and $400,000 to rent trailers for 2 years. So I take my cell phone, I go out, I call my friend of mine who's a builder, a big builder, builds county buildings. I go, Joe, I've been to this place. I go, that place burned down. Could you rebuild that for $750,000? And what he says to me is, if you gave me $750,000 the day after Labor Day, you would be moving into the Taj Mahal the day before Memorial Day, and I'd give you $100,000 back. But the reality is, it's government, so get ready. So I go back in and I vote no. I'm not spending $750,000, $350,000 for a plan. Now, I want you to keep in mind, it's open 3 months a year, okay? There's, I think, 475 parking spots. So during the weekends, it's filled up by 10 o'clock in the morning. It's closed, you can't get in. So there's no reason to build a Taj Mahal. And it's only open 3 months a year. There's no heat, there's no air conditioning, it's just a shack. So what do? I go to the waiver committee. It used to be not open to the public, but a few years ago they voted to open it to the public. So I go and I sit and I ask questions. So it comes up, I'm sitting there, a bunch of different things. All of a sudden I see the architectural, the $350,000 is going to only certain architects because this is such a specialized thing. So in the meantime, let me just back up a little bit, I call 2 architect friends of mine. They both start laughing. I could do this for $35,000, or you can buy one off the internet all around the country, these beach shacks, for probably $5,000. So now it comes up and it comes to the waiver committee. And now only these 5 people can vote, are qualified to design this beach hut. So sure enough, 3-0, boom, done, it gets approved. So now the bid goes to these 5 people. And all 5 are in here, in the campaign contributions.
Coincidence?
Coincidence? No, no coincidence. That's one thing. Now, just last week, there was a $60,000 grant for everyone. Clearly there's a huge heroin problem, there's an opiate problem, and we want to do the most we possibly can to it. So there's a niche, it was in Newsday about 2 weeks ago, about women who are pregnant who have opiate addiction. Okay, now I was a cop in narcotics for 15 years. I know a lot about opiate addiction. I know about how these people work. And they want an 800 number that they can call in case they're in a crisis situation. Or, not an 800 number, a 24-hour hotline. So they have the $60,000. It's going to be given to this group to run this hotline. So having been a cop, I know that when you go to a call and there's an opiate addiction problem or an alcohol problem or domestic violence problem, we have this sheet of 24-hour hotlines that they should call. We recommend that they call. 17 numbers on this sheet. So before I went to the waiver committee, I pulled up. There's 70 numbers in Suffolk and Nassau County that you can call. So what they were doing, so I went to the waiver committee, and the chairman of the health committee's there, and the person in charge of opiate addiction, they said, this is great, we need this number. I go, wait a minute, here's 17 numbers. So as we're discussing this and debating this, I said, oh, by the way, what's the phone number? They didn't know. They didn't know the number. Oh, they were adding it to an existing 800 number because they already have a 24-hour hotline for narcotics. They just basically were giving $60,000 away. They weren't getting a new phone number. They said, oh, the increased number of calls we're gonna need to hire another person. So how many pregnant females are gonna be calling this number that we have to spend $60,000? And sure enough, approved 3-0, $60,000 out the window. I can go on and on and on and on and on with these things. But until people start showing up and giving the county executive and making this more balanced, we're burying ourselves. And we're burying ourselves in debt. I mean, think about this. We sold the Dennison building. It's the equivalent of the president selling the White House. It actually appraised for $32 million, but we needed 70. So we sold it for 72 million. And we're gonna be paying back 108 million. We borrowed the money from the New York State Dorm Authority. But that's what we needed to balance the budget. And that was before I got there. Even the Republicans voted for it because they got themselves in such deep debt. Do you want to know why they got themselves in such deep debt? Because I can tell you that I love the police. I was a cop for 25 years. But the reality is, you want to talk about campaign contributions? They have a super PAC, okay? You're going to be reading Newsday. They're doing a big story on this. I'm going to pick Legislator B, whoever he is out in Patchogue. He spent $45,000 on his campaign. Now, to put things in perspective, my last campaign, I spent $1,800. The one I won with, I spent $24,000. Now, he spent $45,000 on his election, but the PBA kicked in $100,000 in outside super PAC money. So we spent $145,000 to get elected to a job that pays about $98,000 a year. And if it wasn't for the PBA with $100,000, who knows? You know, the other guy could have won. Probably would have won because it's 13 mailers, some ridiculous things that go on. So that's, now what happens? Now the contract comes up. Now, is anybody aware what their contract was worth? I mean, I went in and I screened with them, and this is what I said. Listen, I was a cop, here's my platform. No give-backs and a cost of living increase. And the cost of living is 1.2%. A couple of years it was 0%, just with Social Security is going up. Like if you don't get my parents are on Social Security. They got 3 zeros or 2 zeros in a row. How can they afford to pay? They got 3.5%. So they got almost 3 times the cost of living. Now granted, the new hires are cheaper. They hired 100. Do you think it really makes it cheaper? If they would have done 1.75 and kept, now you've got 2 tiers of people too. And you know what's gonna happen? What's gonna happen? That money, that PBA money is gonna still influence the politicians, and these lower tiers are gonna be pushed right back up again. And you know, I hate to say it, but it's just, Suffolk County is a sinking ship. We have, you know, $130 million budget shortfall this year. Way over. They say 1.5 billion. It's way over because we have about $600 million of recurring debt that we borrow for just to pay off by the end of the year, then borrow it again. So the reality is it's well over $2 billion. You want to talk about red light cameras? Red light cameras are nothing more than a tax, plain and simple. Don't anybody ever tell you any different, because if you have a camera and you got a guy running through a red light, dangerous situation, God bless him, he should get a ticket. He should get 3 tickets. But for 95%, that number comes from the people there at the Traffic Violations Bureau, are people running up to right on reds, pulling up, looking, nobody coming, and just rolling through it. I'm the victim of 2 of them. You know, every single day I get a phone call from someone where they, or it's a shortened, or I don't know, I don't want to say it was shortened, but it was clearly, shorter than I would like. Someone trying to sneak through, making a left-hand turn, or getting through in a traffic situation where there's no danger, because there's a second gap. I ran one for a woman today, 0.4 seconds she was through the red light. So that means that other one's going to be green, the other people aren't coming for more than a half a second. So there's no danger involved. But when someone runs through the light, they should get a ticket. No doubt about it. My voice is losing. Crazy. And we'll talk about the police department in a minute. The police department, 99.9% of the cops are great, hard-working cops who will do whatever they can. Unfortunately, in this day and age, we got Burke up there, and he brought a couple of, I'm thinking I know of about 5 or 6 guys that were forced to retire because of his actions. And I don't know if you people are aware, he actually was sending out text messages to go to retirement parties of people he didn't like. And he wanted to know who was there. This one guy in particular, Pat Cuff, he was a 3-star chief. He was the guy who did this investigation, who caught him when he was a sergeant having sex with prostitutes in his police car. He was a 3-star chief afterwards, and then when Burke made chief, he immediately demoted him to captain. And then he stayed on for about a year or so, and then he retired. And then he sent out a text, Burke sent out a text message saying, I need friendlies to go there. I want to know what cops, active and retired, and what politicians are going, and send someone there who can identify everybody. This is what you're dealing with. The reality of it is he was putting tracking devices on, we know, the deputy commissioner's car, because she was not one of them, and he wanted to get something on her so that he can go to the county executive and say, look what she's doing, look what's going on here. So this is, I mean, you talk about craziness. Let me go how crazy this is. When I was in the FBI, they pulled us out, that situation I told you about. The Long Island Press did a newspaper article. It was called Turf War, the FBI fighting with the police department. Do you know that Burke opened up an internal affairs report on me and the 2 other guys? And when I called the lieutenant when the lieutenant called me at home from internal affairs, I said, listen, I was a cop for 25 years. I never took a sick day. I was never out injured. I've never done anything wrong. This is ridiculous. And you know what the lieutenant from internal affairs said to me? Don't feel bad. You're not the only guy. You're not the only guy he's after. I feel like I'm in the Gestapo. That's what the lieutenant from internal affairs said to me about Burke. And 2 weeks later, he was transferred, gone. But that's when you talk about corruption in government, and if you don't go on with what they say, you're dead. I mean, I'm sure you read in the paper. My friend, my very close friend, who was in the FBI with me, he was leaking. I don't want to say leak. He was giving a Newsday reporter case numbers of shootings they weren't reported. Now, what people have to understand, a reckless endangerment is if someone runs past this room and shoots 5 bullets in the room and doesn't hit anybody, it's a reckless endangerment. That's not reportable to the federal government. In the state system, if they catch that guy the next day, he'll be out on bail in 2 days, which I'm going to tell you another story about that in a minute. In the federal system, when they catch him, it's attempted gang assault, minimum mandatory 10 years in federal prison. So what do those guys do when you catch them? They start talking. And guess what he did when he pulled us out of those task forces? He did away with that. That ability was gone. That's why the heroin, he pulled 4 guys out of the DEA. They're not making heroin in Suffolk County. They're bringing it in from Brooklyn, Queens, and the Bronx. Okay, I did many, many cases doing this. That's where it all comes back to. And what did he do? He pulled people out. I personally went up to the county executive after I got elected. I go, are you out of your mind? Do you know what this guy's doing? This is after this, actually. I go, are you out of your mind? Are you crazy having this guy there? I stand by him. And then he gets in the newspaper and says, oh, I was lied to. Please. You want to talk about being lied to? He's lying to the public. Oh, I didn't know. I was lied to. Now, what is this? What is him, this was afterwards, but the federal government doesn't probe police chiefs unless there's something wrong. So what do we do? What has the county executive said on it now? He issued a statement saying, oh, I've been lied to for 2 years. And we're going to accept that? And it all comes back to what someone was saying before. When politicians get elected to jobs, it's a nice job, you don't kill yourself, you're not digging any ditches, you can just skate on, like 95% of people get elected every single time. Because you're very, very hard. Only Lee Zeldin can beat Bishop out there, but it's very hard to get beat. So even in my own party, I stand alone a lot of the times. There's been over 200 votes worth 17-1. I mean, they will borrow money to buy that mic stand. I caught them, they were bonding police cars for 15 years. Having been a cop, police cars are driven 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. They last 2 years. So our unborn children will be paying for those police cars that they're driving around today. I mean, where's the logic? My favorite one, and this really got me, the environmentalists, the water quality. Remember voting on a referendum last year for water quality? We're spending $30 million to buy open space. The reality was, we had $100 million in a sewer stabilization fund that we could have bought open space with, we could have sewered part of the districts, but we needed the money to pay pension costs. We had no money. So what does he do? He gets the ability to borrow $100 million that we have, then he borrows another $30 million to appease the environmentalists, Dick Amper, so we can buy some open space. And what does he do? We have to pay it back. And how do we pay it back? 5% a year till 2029. And guess what? Do the math. Between now and 2029, it's 45%. So there's a balloon payment in 2029. And guess who's going to pay that? None of us, because we'll probably all be dead. Our kids will be paying it. But no one looks into it. No one looks, I'm one of the few guys who sit down and go, are you people crazy? Adrienne Esposito, the woman, Citizens Campaign for an Environment, she was all over this. I said, do you realize what's going on here? There's $100 million that could be spent on sewers, and they're taking it to pay pension benefits because they got themselves involved in these huge contracts they can't pay. And what do they do to even just sort of balance it a little bit? They lay off 1,000 of the lowest paid people. That's why I can't get potholes filled on county roads. Oh, we used to have 39 people, now we have 9. We'll get to it in a month. It's mismanaged, and it's all about money.